Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Friday, July 17th, 2026. I'm David Menzies here at Rebel News headquarters in Toronto, and my co-host from Medicine Hat, Alberta, the one I like to call the good Tamara, that would be Tamara Leach. How you doing there, Tamara?
The good Tamara. Jury's literally still out on that one, David, but I'm doing really well. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Well, thank you so much. That came out a little garbled, but I suppose it was something I should be thanking you for. But anyways, we'll carry on. And folks, our extra special guest, he comes to us all the way from Victoria, BC, aka the city for the newlywed and the nearly dead. That would be National Post columnist / reporter Tristin Hopper. How you doing there, Tristin?
Very good. Thank you for having me on this round table.
And thank you for joining us. And I guess, Tamara, this is where you let our viewers know how they can get involved in the discussion via Super Chats.
Absolutely. If you want to be a part of the discussion, you can follow us on YouTube and send a super chat. Or if you're watching everything, you can send a super thanks. And also on Rumble, I can't remember what they're called on Rumble, but there is also a way to donate on Rumble also. Rumble Rants, that's what it is. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
And I believe if they're over $5, we will read them on the air.
All right, fantastic. So let's kick off with something. I find this very refreshing, to tell you the truth. It was Marco Rubio saying that the State Department is imposing new visa restrictions to bar far-left terrorists from entering our country. Foreigners who finance, incite, or aid and abet far-left terrorists are enemies of our civilization. They are not welcome in the United States. Well, Tristin, let's start with you. First of all, I find this refreshing, as I mentioned. And secondly, could you imagine anyone in the Mark Carney Liberals making this kind of public pronouncement?
No, I couldn't imagine him doing that. So I think an earlier version of me, if you'd asked me 10 years ago about something like this, and I think there was something way back in the George W. Bush administration, there was something like this. Border guards were going to start looking at social media histories or whatever. And at the time, I would have thought, well, you'll just get some power-mad border guard that's going to find something innocuous. They didn't have J.D. Vance memes back in those days, but something like that, and then they'll use that to kick you out of the country. However, from a Canadian context, we've seen so many examples, particularly in recent years, of people who have been granted visas and even citizenship, despite very long track records of being openly hostile to the Canadian system. And if the response to that is you just shrug your shoulders and be like, well, what are you going to do? We just let people in. They hate us and want to destroy us. And we give them citizenship. So I think, yeah, given the events of the last 2-3 years, when you have like Laith Marouf would be the sort of, totemic example. He enters Canada as the son of a diplomat. Basically from the get-go is, an anti-Canadian campaigner, virulently anti-Zionist, all the way back, is organizing, violent illegal protests as far back as 2002. And there are no checks in place, not only to stop him from becoming a Canadian citizen, but to stop him from getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in anti-racism funding. So this leads me to believe that there's basically no screening whatsoever on the basic ideology of people we're bringing in. And I think that's extremely uncontroversial, that there's some sort of check to that effect. If you're showing up to the meeting in an Osama bin Laden shirt, there should be a box that a screener can check and like, oh, that's not going to work here. Sorry.
Point well taken, Tristin. And Tamara, the way I look at things, ever since October 7th, 2023, what I've seen in the streets of my once beloved city, Toronto, what I've seen in the streets of so many major cities in the Western world, people going out, and large numbers of people, let's not skirt around the issue, And they're doing everything like chanting anti-Semitism. They are displaying swastikas. They are cosplaying as terrorists. And I think this is kind of being a scathing indictment of the failure of state-sponsored multiculturalism. This was something Pierre Trudeau brought in the early 70s. And there was always this unspoken agreement, wasn't there? This idea that come from anywhere in the world and pursue the Canadian dream, take advantage of our welfare programs, whether it's unemployment insurance, welfare, free health care, so on and so forth. But don't import your hatred. Don't import your age-old grudges. But I think maybe kind of like the 1971 Ford Pinto, look good on paper, in practice didn't really play out that well, especially when you see mobs chanting death to one specific demographic. What are your thoughts, Tamara?
Well, I mean, you're exactly right. I think we've definitely seen a rise. There was a time in Canada where if you moved here, if you immigrated to Canada, you had to assimilate. You had to become part of the Canadian culture. That didn't mean you had to leave yours behind, but we're seeing it even in the justice system. Like, Chris and I went out for our verdict last April, and while we were there, we found out that the Crown prosecutor, who was the first Crown prosecutor in our case, had dropped the charges against 4 pro-Palestinian protesters in Ottawa who had the same charges as Chris Barber and myself. And all they had to do was write a letter of apology and make a donation to a charity. Wow. So it shows you literally the difference in how 2 separate groups are treated. And it's a massive problem. And you used to have to be able to at least speak one of their official languages, and that's not even a requirement anymore.
And that's a good point, I think Tamara makes, Tristin, that the double standard when it comes to those in office, especially here in Canada, and even when Mr. Rubio talks about importing left-wing terrorists, we know there are domestic left-wing terrorists, so to speak. I would say that would define Antifa. And we know the Democrats, they say, oh, no, Antifa's not a thing. It's just an idea. No, it's a thing. They mass en masse. They are inherently violent. I've always thought the irony of Antifa, it's a contraction, meaning anti-fascist, but they use all the tools of fascists: intimidation, violence, vandalism, you name it. What are your thoughts on that, Tristin?
Whether they are yeah, no, you're right. It's very much projection. It's rare, actually, that I see an extreme left argument these days that isn't some form of projection. We're talking about anti-Zionism. Everything. Every argument you make, there actually isn't a genocide happening in Gaza, and it'll be turned around. Actually, there is a genocide. So yeah, this idea. So I guess you go back to the 1960s and 1970s violent underground movements all across the United States, like the Weather Underground. They should have been a better name. They should have been called the Anti-Weather Underground or something. Maybe they would have had a bit more, a few more years to go along, but. The argument that these are, a real and present danger. We just started seeing in Canada, I'm sure you brought it up on other shows, the Palestine Action Committee, I'm forgetting the actual name. They should have picked a rosier, fuzzier name, frankly. But where they're calling for what they call direct action, which is essentially, violent actions, terrorism in furtherance of their goals. Now, we did have a version of this, again, in the 1960s and 1970s. You had leftist groups that started attacking contractors with tertiary connections to the U.S. military, with the idea that this was going to be a way of sort of fighting back against U.S. involvement in Vietnam. And there were Canadians killed as a result of that. I'm thinking there was a bombing attack in Edmonton that ended up killing a security guard, other incidences of property damage. So you could see this as an escalation. So the idea that Canada is not immune, that is immune to this, and can't start seeing incidents of violence breaking out among all these. We've had 2-3 years of extremist left-wing groups glorifying violence. So I don't know why we're assuming that that wouldn't turn into actual violence sooner or later.
Yeah, and I think we have to say shame on the political class, shame on the police for just allowing this to fester. And you have these agitators forever pushing the envelope. And why wouldn't you? If there's no repercussions, then you're enabling the mob. I think let's skip down to, well, what do you know, at the Calgary Stampede. Let's run this video. You know, can you think of anything more friendly, more heartwarming than a pancake breakfast? Although I gotta avoid pancakes these days. But let's roll this video, and somehow a pancake breakfast is fascist?
Do you like my shirt? Protect trans kids. So I'm just wondering, I'm just wondering about Alberta selling, like, you want to sell Alberta out to billionaires. Like, do you actually think the Epstein class is going to protect you when it all goes down? Wow, that's a lot of unconnected things together, and we are protecting. You are protecting the environment? Sure. So why are you putting through all these data centers without environmental? A lot of unconnected things there.
You're selling us out to AI data centers. You're selling us out to AI. You just went on a separatist podcast. Why are you platforming Berta Proud Dad? I don't care if I use Facebook. Yeah. You platform Berta Proud Dad as separatist. You're a separatist. You're a fucking separatist. You don't care about us. You only care about selling us out for money. Look, you're fascist pancakes. You're a fucking fascist. You don't give a shit about any of us. You sold us out to corporations. Don't fucking touch me. Let me fucking go. You fucking fascist. Let me fucking go.
You know, Tamara and Tristin, if you just happened upon that pancake breakfast at that moment, who would you assume is the fascist? The Premier Smith calmly and collectively flipping pancakes and engaging in discussion, or someone who is unhinged, super angry, super amped up, completely full of profanity? I don't know. I'm, Tristin, I'm getting confused. Which one is the fascist here? What say you?
Oh no, I've certainly been in situations. I'm kind of a short-fused maniac at times, and with age, I have come to realize that. Yeah, no matter the righteousness of your cause, when you're the person standing in a public park screaming at a public official, there's very few instances in which you're the sympathetic figure in that exchange.
Yeah, and Tamara, I think Premier Smith came across as very calm, cool, collected. She emerges from that as the hero, I would say. And what is it with the left these days that suddenly being anti-AI data centers, that's the new call to action, when in fact this is something that will bring wealth, lots of jobs to Canada? And would you rather the AI data centers are established in China? Oh, I think we have some technical difficulties, I believe. Olivia, do we have Tamara Leach? My apologies, folks. We have a bad connection, so I am with Tristin Hopper of the National Post. Can I get your thoughts on that too, Tristin? Why is it that the left is anti-AI data centers all of a sudden? I'm not sure I connect the dots there.
That was actually interesting when you're listening to what she's saying, because she said, mentioned the Epstein class and the AI data centers, and then maybe it's not so much present in the Canadian right wing, but certain elements of the American right wing right now. I would say about 60 to 70% of what you're hearing that would be indistinguishable. You would actually have to, poll me, is this person, extremely right-wing or extremely left-wing? So there's an increasing, it's been referred to as sort of, the horseshoe right, the horseshoe left, where at a certain level of fringe, the ideas start to get mushed together. So AI data centers would be a great example of that, and referring to anybody as being part of the Epstein class, also another good example. So, yeah, those two elements of the speech were kind of a new thing. You wouldn't have heard those 2 years ago. If you're screamed at in a public environment, you could pretty easily tell whether that person was left wing or right wing. And now you've kind of had this mushing of the fringe, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I'm surprised I couldn't quite hear, given all the rhetoric, but if she had touched upon climate change, but maybe that's yesterday's cause.
It is noticeable. I don't think she was touching on climate change, which is also noticeable because it's like, oh, that's nobody cares about that anymore. This new thing is AI data centers. So it's interesting, to look at issues that, it was going to completely destroy the world 2-3 years ago, and now it's AI data centers. So
terrific. Well, let's move on.
Like Jane Fonda. There's no. Yeah, I'm going.
And I was just going to say, let's move on to the whole Gordie Howe Bridge between Windsor and Detroit. I believe the latest projected opening is July 27th.
Yes.
It's kind of like, it's almost like, do we have a ceasefire with Iran or not? Will the bridge open on July 27th or not? But Pierre Poilievre weighed into this, and I think he pretty much nailed it. Quote, "We paid for this bridge, so Prime Minister, what's the deal?" Now, Tristin, the Carney Liberals, they're all about elbows up. I think on this, given that Canada paid the freight 100%, this is clearly elbows down. I can't help but think of the irony. Gordie Howe, an NHL superstar, famous for elbowing right away. But what do you say on this? Is this a touchdown or a fumble?
Now, the Carney government's argument would be, we're collecting, we're going to share revenues with the Americans, which, considering we paid for the entirety of the bridge. And if you go back, because this bridge was negotiated during the Harper era, and the Americans were real stubborn about not, this was going to be, I think we asked them for American assistance at the time, and they said, no, you're building this bridge, up yours. So, the fact now that they're having a problem with that is particularly galling and egregious. If you're familiar with the origins of this bridge. But I mean, I guess the Carney argument would be, we promised that. However, initially, and maybe I'll be proved wrong on what they're claiming about this. They say, well, we collect tolls until we've paid off the Canadian debt, and then we're sharing. And by that point, it's 10, 15 years in the future. Trump is gone. It's a completely different relationship with the Americans. So I guess the steelman liberal argument is, this is the ideal deal. This is the deal everybody wants to make with Trump. The one where he gets to claim to be strong, and he's shown taught the Canadians a lesson, but we actually haven't conceded anything. So it's almost like we, followed the Iran playbook. We give up nothing. He gets to claim victory, and we haven't conceded. It's always been my argument. We just name a mountain after Trump, and then he drops all the tariffs and whatever. And so, art of the deal, he gets to claim victory, but we don't actually give anything up. So time will tell if that is what happened here.
Yeah, Tamara, and glad to have you reconnected there. I would say even giving up one plug nickel is a defeat, given that, Canada has absorbed all the costs with this bridge. And by the way, employed U.S. workers during the construction of the bridge used U.S. steel. So I think that's a major concession to begin with. But in the courts, the Moran family, which owns the Ambassador Bridge, I think they went to court. The number that remains in my head is 24 times, and Canada was 24-0. They won at every single junction. They're trying to shut it down. They're trying to protect their bridge monopoly, the Ambassador Bridge. So I'm just wondering, given that background and all those court victories, and these are courts in the U.S., by the way, why are we in any position to make any concession?
Sorry about my technical difficulties. I hope I have them all straightened out there now. And I did miss a little bit of this, but yeah, exactly. And the thing is, from what I'm seeing, is Mark Carney can't even keep his story straight about what's going on at the bridge. So I don't know how, Canadians can expect to be completely informed when it doesn't appear that our own prime minister doesn't know what's going on.
Right. But ultimately, whenever this does open, and I know you have connections with the trucking industry, Tamara, this is a very good thing, isn't it? I mean, it's freeing up the congestion that, you see at the Ambassador Bridge, because it's the only way for trucks to get over. Yes, there's a tunnel, but of course, the tunnel can't accommodate transport trucks. And given that there are dueling entities with this bridge crossing, that means competition as opposed to the Ambassador Bridge monopoly. Certainly that's a good thing for people in your industry, no?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely it will. I mean, the more routes, the better. And like you said, it is congested, the Ambassador Bridge, and very busy. So this will definitely open up and free that up a little bit more. But of course they don't want to give up their monopoly. I mean, they're making gobs and gobs and gobs of money.
Oh yes, and you mark my words, I bet the first thing we'll see is tolls going down, not up,
yes,
as they compete against it. And that's good. That's the free market economy. Moving on, guys. Well, I haven't seen this, so it's a surprise to me as well as you. It's a video. It's slugged. This is not a parody. This is the deputy leader of the Green Party of Ontario. Let's roll this and see what she had to rant about.
I am so sad right now. I talked to somebody about the weather, and everybody I talked to is so alarmed that this is happening. This is not normal to have our air full of smoke so that everybody has to stay inside. I think of the people up north who are evacuating their homes. I think of our wildland firefighters whose budgets are always being cut. And this premier doesn't say the word climate change, is talking about building new pipeline. How dare he? Not only is this affecting people right here, right now, it's affecting future generations, and that is his legacy. So as a mom, as a concerned citizen, as somebody who's been banging on pots for ages, I blame the oil and gas sector for burying the evidence and creating a massive marketing campaign against the action that we should be taking. Shame on those politicians that are building new pipelines right now. Shame on those politicians that are not investing in adaptation, because they are making people sick, and we can do better.
Wow. Well, Tristin, a couple of things. First of all, she's going to be damn grateful for the oil and gas sector in about 4 or 5 months when the humidex is replaced by wind chill factors. And secondly, yeah, it's Premier Ford's fault, you see, and the oil industry. Like, there were no forest fires back in, say, I don't know, the Jurassic era before humanity was even a thing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, one thing I try and remind people is this is actually a return to the norm. So the idea of not having fires, that's sort of a everybody comes back from the Second World War, and then we have a policy of just putting out any fires whatsoever. So we had 50, 60 years. Most Canadians have grown up in an era in which nothing is ever catching fire, whatever. And there's a variety of problems with that. You're just stacking up the fuel so when the fire comes, it's larger. But if you go to early colonial times, or you even look at early Indigenous accounts, it's pretty standard that you have skies filled with smoke. I'm forgetting this precise example, but this was colonial New England, where one year the smoke was so intense, and they didn't know where it was coming from because they don't even, it's a pre-industrial society, so they're like, this is volcanoes, this is the devil, we don't know what this is. So there were examples of the smoke getting so thick they actually thought it was the end times. So everybody's going to church in midday and like, well, we better pray and wait for the horsemen of the apocalypse to show up. So this is I would urge people to say this is a return to first principles, that you're just kind of choking on smoke all summer for a variety of reasons. But it's also a return to first principles for the Green Party. People forget, in the early 70s, this was kind of, anxiety, slight mental illness. This is kind of the origins of where a lot of Canadian Green Parties come from. Then there was a brief period where they wore suits and were semi-sane, and now they're back to the way they were. So, on both of these fronts, it's a return to the norm, and that feels good.
Yeah, and Tamara, I kind of feel bad for Elizabeth May. We generally consider her the chief kook of the Green Party, but this gal is giving old Elizabeth a run for her money. But to Tristin's point, the timeline, we have to keep in mind that I think accurate weather records only go back about 250, 300 years. So when the climate alarmists say, this is the hottest day in 3 decades. Decades? Are you kidding me? Given the age of the planet, a millennium is a blink of an eyelash, for goodness sakes. They don't mention that when they're drumming up their hysteria, do they?
They sure don't. And literally, the climate has been changing since the Earth came to be. Literally, we're on a giant rock hurling through space. So to actually think that you can throw money at a problem like this and fix it, other than say to work on the forestry and the cleanup of the deadwood, right? This is just completely alarmist Karen type behavior. I truly am offended by her dress. Maybe I could do a rant about that. It's just fear mongering. And I worked in oil and gas most of my adult career, David, and I can tell you that I've always been shocked that our leaders and our politicians weren't going around the world, singing the praises of our oil and gas industry. It is one of the most efficient and environmentally friendly energy industries in the whole world.
Oh,
so
100%. And I should plug our boss's book, Ethical Oil, if you want to get a tutorial on how well the oil and gas industry works in Canada versus other oil and gas nations around the world. But Tristin, I mentioned, give it 4 or 5 months, she'll be praising oil and gas. But really, I bet she, even though she won't praise it, she's taking advantage of it right now. We're in the 30-degree zone this past week, humidex into the 40s. When she flips on her air conditioner so she doesn't melt in that yellow dress of hers, how does she think that's operating? Via dilithium crystals?
Well, she is in Toronto, so it's almost certainly coming from nuclear power, which she probably also hates.
Yeah. So what are we supposed to do? Unbelievable.
The thing, David, the thing is everything in her video is a result of a petroleum product. Even the device that she's recording her video on contains petroleum products. So she can't hate oil and gas that much, or otherwise she'd be living in a tent.
Tamara, that is a profound point. When I've gone into the field to cover these protests by the climate alarmists, what are they wearing? Well, typically vinyl rain breakers. The phone, I think of all the components from the petrochemical industry. Do you think one of these people would give up their cell phone to save Mother Earth? No problem. So it really is such a hypocritical attitude, is it not?
Yes, it is. And they're just completely ignorant to, and that's why, I don't really pay them too much attention other than to laugh at videos like this.
100%. Well, folks, we're at the halfway point, so we have some ads to run. Tristin, are you hanging around for the second half too?
Yes, I can continue for the second half.
Excellent. I'm happy to hear that. So, folks, we will be back with Tamara and Tristin right after these messages.
For generations, many Canadians have preserved more than just firearms.
Many of our men and women
They've preserved history, tradition, competition, memories. But under Trudeau, and now Carney, heirlooms, estates, collectibles, and competition firearms now have to be surrendered and destroyed. While violent gun criminals get pass after pass, openly ignoring any legislation, lawful gun owners are trapped in an increasingly unfair legal system. But we can help. Canada's National Firearms Association's Save Firearms program offers the legal pathway to preserve what matters, while we work towards a political solution. Don't let yours be next. Save history. Save heritage. Save firearms. Visit nfa.ca today to learn more.
Canada's been told to just quit smoking for decades, same message over and over, and yet millions of Canadians still smoke. So let's ask a follow-up question. For those who don't quit, what about change? In 2026, Canada has options that didn't exist years ago. Smoke-free alternatives for adults who would otherwise continue smoking. That doesn't mean risk-free, it means informed choice. If you don't smoke, don't start. If you smoke, quit. But for those who don't quit, change could still be part of the conversation. That's why Canadians should check out unsmoke.ca, an information resource focused on smoke-free alternatives and honest facts, not judgment. Put the lighter down, Canada. Learn what your options are.
In Canada, firearms owners like me understand the importance of safe, effective self-defense options. That's why we're proud to have Byrna as a sponsor. Byrna's less lethal launchers are designed to help protect you and your family without taking a life. Byrna offers peace of mind, accessibility, and a practical layer of personal security for Canadians who value safety. Learn more at byrna.ca/rebel. That's byrna.ca/rebel.
And folks, I have a very brief ad read here. You know, we hear a lot about crypto, but here's the part most people miss. Crypto was created so you could actually own and control your money. After the 2008 financial crisis, Bitcoin was designed as an alternative to banks. So instead of a bank holding your money, delaying transfers, or limiting access, you're in control. And if you've ever had to wait for a transfer to clear, you felt that problem. Now, fast forward to today, everyone's heard of crypto, but getting started still feels complicated. That's exactly why I use Rebel Wallet. It takes all that complexity and makes it simple. Choose what you want: Bitcoin, dollar-backed stable coins, or even digital gold backed by real gold. No complicated setup. It connects with MoonPay, so you can use your credit card, debit card, or bank and be up and running in minutes. Once you're set up, you can even support your favorite Rumble creators, like me, directly. So do this now. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description and download Rumble Wallet. From here, you can set up your wallet, tap buy, and you're in the game in just a few minutes. You can go from hearing about crypto to actually owning some. There you go. And by the way, I have to go to you, Tamara Leach. If there's one thing Canadians learned the hard way, going back to the Freedom Convoy in the early months of 2022, was when Fraulein Freeland froze bank accounts. Do you remember that? Anyone who had the temerity, I think the benchmark was $50, you were in the process of being debanked. At least you were not able to access your accounts. I've never talked about this with you, Tamara. How did you feel about that, I think, outrageous government overreach, A, and B, the capitulation by the big banks to go along with it?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is Banana Republic style governing, really, and tactics. And that's the thing that, especially people that I speak to outside of Canada, that's the thing that alarms them the most, that the Canadian government actually froze those bank accounts. And they said the benchmark was $50, but I met a server at a restaurant here in Medicine Hat who donated, she's a single mom of 3 young boys. She donated $10 and they froze her account. Oh. So she couldn't buy groceries for her kids even. So it is completely banana style. And look, I mean, they still haven't been held accountable. Chrystia Freeland stood there in front of the world giggling like a schoolgirl about unlawfully, unconstitutionally, and illegally freezing bank accounts and assets and suspending insurance. And And now she's just got a sweet new role in the Ukraine. Like she just skipped out of town, and life goes on. In the meantime, the rest of us are still back here dealing with our own situations. We've been held accountable. We're paying the price for that now. As you know, I'm on house arrest, so I'm in my basement. And but the people responsible have not been held to account yet, and they just keep trying to kick this down the road through the appeals process.
And Tristin, how did you feel about that odious chapter of Canadian history back when the Emergencies Act was invoked by the Justin Trudeau Liberals? What were your thoughts, rather, when you heard that people, much like the lady Tamara Leach talked about, a waitress, a single mom, having her bank account frozen for making a $10 donation towards a peaceful demonstration?
I just lost you there for a second. I guess I'll start by saying that it's troubling to me that I'm not on house arrest, and my lifestyle seems almost exactly the same as Ms. Leach. I'm also in my basement at this particular moment. I mean, my take on it at the time, it's probably going to be different than Ms. Leach's, but at the time, it's sort of, I saw it as overreach, given that at the time, if you just wanted to clear people out of the downtown core, there were plenty of existing mechanisms you could have used to do that. So, as I wrote at the time, you got the Motor Vehicle Act. It's similar to what I write about anti-Zionist protesters. So you have with the anti-Zionists, you're saying, well, we need a new law for this particular type of hate speech. We need a new law that just gets rid of the exemption for Bible passages. So you just have this fetish for new laws, new measures, when at the time I was saying, well, if you just don't want a bunch of truckers in the downtown core, there are things that you can employ already. And instead, those were discarded in favor of an overreaction from the Emergencies Act, to the point where Ms. Leach is talking about you have people who donated $10 suddenly having their bank accounts frozen. And I think at the time, and if you looked at the international discourse of how Canada was handling this, even the other WUS countries were kind of laughing at us, because France has lots of experience with large protests, and they're saying, well, we had our equivalent of freedom convoys show up, and we just did what we always do. We had a bunch of riot cops and bulldozers that say French police on the side, and we just sort of cleared them out because we're on this aspect, we're still an adult country who can sort of handle these problems. And Canada just sat on its hands, didn't know what to do for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then had an insane overreaction on the other side. So it was just, mishandling. Probably not the satisfying answer you were hoping in this context, but that was my take.
And Tristin, if I may ask, I mean, in the department of plenty of blame to go around, the big banks did not have to acquiesce, at least I think. Yeah, I get it. They're federally regulated. But if they said en masse, no, we're not going to attack our customers, what could the federal government have done? What are your thoughts on that?
That's true. So I think at the time, you can. And we have recently seen examples, slight examples of that occurring. I think the environments at the time, they weren't prepared to do that. But if I would point you to the recent example of where you had police agencies across the country coming up publicly against the assault style, gun ban and confiscation scheme. I've never seen anything like this before, in which you have police agencies in every single time zone across Canada saying we're not participating in this federal mandate. And also, we think it's a dumb idea to fight crime. So sort of this instance of resistance to a federal law. So you're right. If you did have something that was as much of an overreach as egregious now, potentially you do have a situation in which banks that are fed up with the government for a whole bunch of other reasons start pushing back. I mean, you're seeing this with a lot of the sort of government censorship, where you're seeing tech companies come out against this to a level that maybe they wouldn't have in prior years. So I think you're correct. Yes, the banks at the time could have said, Okay, even if we don't like Freedom Convoy, and whether you believe the polls or not, it was 80% of Canadians did not like Freedom Convoy at the time. Even if you had banks saying we don't like Freedom Convoy, but this is a Rubicon we're not willing to cross, in which we're freezing bank accounts. This is why I'm always advocating for changing the public conversation, and then sort of the politics will follow. I am optimistic that were something similar to happen, you might have more pushback from the banks than you did at the time.
Well, I'll end it with this. I don't think anyone is more happy than the cryptocurrency providers, so that was the biggest ad in their favor by far. Let's move on. Speaking of crime and punishment, and this boils my blood. I bet you the vast majority, if not all of our audience is on side, because when it comes to political issues, they say, well, this is 60-40 pro and con. It's 70-30, 80-20. I think this is 99-1. Here's the headline: public must pay sex offenders $50,000 legal tab. A judge took the rare step of ordering costs against the Crown last month in the case of a man who was convicted, I repeat, convicted of aggravated sexual assault. Tamara Leach, did you ever think you would see such a thing? I mean, for goodness sakes, you were put in solitary confinement for some 50 days. And yet here is somebody that actually did a real crime and a gross crime, aggravated sexual assault. And for some reason, this activist judge feels that the Crown, i.e. the taxpayer, has to pay $50,000 in legal fees. What are your thoughts?
Well, welcome to the Canadian legal system. We don't have a justice system in Canada. We have a legal system, and this is a prime example of it. Now, yesterday's headline, if you recall, was the $13 million cocaine bust of the trucker. I think he was a truck driver, who had his charges dropped because he was strip searched improperly or whatever. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I was strip searched, David. Every single time that I left jail and went back for court or whatever, I had to go in and I had to be completely 100% strip searched. Of course, at the time I did have to wear a mask, so that was keeping everybody safe. But again, it just goes back to this two-tier double standard. I mean, this doesn't even make any sense. We've evolved into a society, or devolved into a society, where we're no longer protecting our victims. We're protecting the criminals. And that is not the Canada that I grew up in.
Tamara, it breaks my heart to hear that you were strip searched. I mean, even the people searching you knew you are no threat. They knew you weren't, hiding, to use a wrestling term, a foreign object, to cause havoc. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, this was part of the process to humiliate you for the stand you took.
Well, lucky for them, I have no shame.
Okay,
just kidding.
Tristin,
but yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's exactly what it is. It's just a humiliation ritual.
There you go. Tristin, you're not unfamiliar with the courts. What do you make of a judge ordering a convicted, aggravated sexual assaulter $50,000 in legal fees? I've never seen anything like this.
Now, you did send me the details of this case beforehand, and if I was a good guest, I would have read them. So, but I didn't. So I'm not familiar with the details of the case. So I wouldn't. My knee-jerk reaction isn't to go as hard against this case than I would against, say, a really dumb court case in which the ruling that's, it's cruel and unusual punishment to put a child porn producer in jail for longer than 12 months. Plenty of dumb court cases. But at the same time, even if we fix all of this and we have a victim-centric approach, which I think the public mood is shifting towards that check in 10 years, and I think we could potentially have a dramatically different justice system than we've had for decades at this point. But even within that system, I mean, you still do want a system, and I don't know if this applies in this case, you still want a system in which the police don't do their jobs, they don't follow due diligence, they don't get a warrant. That's one of the consequences is charges are not going to stick against someone, even if they are guilty. So I think even if we have a properly functioning system that doesn't have all these made-up laws about what is and what is not cruel and unusual punishment, if a cop, even if they're going up against, you know, straight up child molester, murderer, whatever, if they're not following proper investigative protocols, one of the consequences could be charges do not stick and that person walks free. Again, don't know if that applies in this case.
Well, actually, Tristin, given that you haven't read the article, I would say you are as clairvoyant as the dearly departed Amazing Kreskin, because indeed one of the judge's arguments, a mitigating factor at least, he called the Toronto cop on the stand deliberately uncooperative. Okay, now, be that as it may, this man was still convicted by this very same judge. Maybe if he was found not guilty, perhaps then there's an argument, but he was found guilty. So again,
it is strange.
I cannot make
Guilty
sense of this.
Money. Which again, you should get better guests who, you know, read all of these details and have much more nuanced legal arguments before they come on.
You fit in just fine, Tristin.
Yeah.
No. So anyway, well, we shall move on. And let's see. Oh, here's an exclusive, guys. Carney's conflict screen linked to 500 million Red Chris mine subsidy. Ottawa has approved 500 million for the Red Chris mine after its majority owner, Newmont Corporation, appeared on Prime Minister Mark Carney's conflict of interest screen. And of course, that's an exclusive to our friends over at Juno News. I don't know, Tamara, there used to be a saying in yesterdecade, what's good for General Motors is good for America. I just get a vibe here that what's good for someone connected in Mark Carney's orbit or the orbit of Brookfield Asset Management is good for Canada. At least, you know, they're not saying that out loud, but I think that's the unspoken strategy. What say you, my friend?
Well, I think this is just another, I mean, throw it on the pile. This guy's ethics, questionable ethics are definitely piling up quickly. And he's obviously quite busy, you know, because he had to hire an American chief COO to run the country, I guess. So he's got better things to do.
Unbelievable. But, you know, to Tamara's point, Tristin, if this is an ethics code violation, well, I guess we'll just go to the ethics commissioner, file a complaint, and if the prime minister is found guilty, he'll be slapped with a $300 fine. I mean, this is a joke.
It is.
Yes, I do believe that was the scrutiny. I mean, we since the beginning, and Mark Carney's only been a politician for like 16 months, if we recall. Yep. But I mean, Brookfield is the everything company. I mean, they really do have, you know, billions upon billions of dollars in assets in almost everything. So it's kind of a unique situation as prime ministers go, because he's with Brookfield. I mean, you can make an argument for Brookfield's primary, secondary, even tertiary ties to almost every aspect of the economy. And it's the aspects of the economy that Mark Carney, as prime minister, is spending the most time on. So it's rare, actually, I see an announcement of his in which there isn't some direct or indirect benefit to Brookfield. Now you can, and that's different from saying like Paul Martin. Paul Martin is the we actually don't have a lot of like, you know, rich multi-millionaire prime ministers in Canada, as opposed to the United States. Paul Martin was sort of the last major investor, multi-millionaire before he went into politics, and he just ran a steamship line. So as long as you had the announcement wasn't directly affecting Atlantic Ocean steamships, there wasn't going to be a conflict of interest with Paul Martin. It's a whole different kettle of fish or worms or whatever the expression would be. just by nature of how pervasive Brookfield is. So I would argue, given the opportunities for conflict of interest, even if Mark Carney was trying his best not to run into conflicts of interest, and we can argue whether or not he's doing that, even with the framework of Brookfield and how closely entwined it is with the Canadian economy, I still think he would have trouble making any decision that didn't have some direct personal financial upside.
No, I completely agree with that. And I truly believe, well, Mark Carney is a multimillionaire. I firmly believe he's going to leave office as a billionaire. I'm sorry, and time will tell. But Tristin, tell me, if you believe the polls, the Carney Liberals are still enjoying favorable approval numbers. And I'm just looking at every barometric out there from an economic point of view: homelessness, food bank usage, people going into bankruptcy. The fact that the thing he ran on, i.e. I'm the businessman, the financier, the adult in the room, I'll get that trade deal with the U.S. It's more than a year later. I mean, forget about elbows up. I think, to use another hockey term, talk about ragging the puck. Tristin, why is it, like I said, if those numbers are accurate, why?
Well, I think they are accurate. Yeah, I do think if someone calls the average Canadian, I think 50+% are saying, I think he's doing a great job, because we forget, especially if you're watching this show, you're tuned into politics. It's probably something you spend a lot of time on. And that does not describe the vast majority of Canadians. And ironically, that's what we love most about Canada, that you don't really care who your neighbor is. You're not too focused on tribalism or loyalties or, regional grievances or whatever. This is a country of people going to work, going to hockey, with hanging out with whoever is in their local neighborhood and not sort of, worrying about the different loyalties of those types of people. The idea that you wouldn't date someone because they support a different political party. I mean, you see that in, the United States, lots of Europe, but it just doesn't really exist here. Now, that's what we love about Canada, but it also means right now we have a Canadian populace that is wildly checked out from politics. They're as tuned into politics as, oh, you are into pick a sport you don't care about. So just try and imagine, cricket, your knowledge of what's happening in the realm of cricket. And that is that the average Canadian, how dialed in they are to federal politics. So they've spent, maybe 10 minutes on the issue of federal politics in the last month. So it was just a Facebook feed. Yeah, he was on this, Mark Carney went and he got this trade deal, and, my tax went down and this particular thing, and the military's expanding. We've always wanted to do that. It seems like everything's going fine. So the knee-jerk reaction. So I think that shows the fragility of that support, because a lot of what he's promised, as you mentioned, is not coming to fruition. So that tuned-out person may check in 6 months and say, I thought we were done with all the tariffs with the Americans, and that hasn't happened at all. I thought we were building faster than ever before, and that doesn't seem to be happening. My rent has not gone down. So I think there is a delayed action on people noticing those. But at the moment, I think his honeymoon is extending because people are hearing what he's saying. They like what he's saying, and they're not yet aware that much of what he's saying probably will not come to fruition in any sort of real aspect.
And, to Tristin's point, Tamara, I think he's right. I always find it staggering how many people aren't tuned in to politics, even municipal politics, because the decisions, there's that saying, those who do not care about politics are destined to be ruled by those who do. And, I can tell you when we go down to Young Dundas Square or whatever it's called these days, and do streeters, and it can be on a front page news item. And the detachment, people not knowing the story, and you being put in the uncomfortable position of, giving the Reader's Digest of the story, it is, like I said, it's staggering. However, if I ask questions like, what do you think about Kim Kardashian's latest diamond-studded bikini? Oh boy, they'll talk chapter and verse till the cows come home. So A, there's the detachment, and B, one other question I have for you, Tamara. I typically hear from the boomers, which was the Liberals' biggest base last year, and I don't mean to tar all boomers by the same brush. I am a boomer myself, but they give the, de rigueur excuse. Well, what do you expect Carney to do? He's dealing with big bad orange man. He's unreasonable. He's an X factor. He's unpredictable. But Tamara, we know that about Trump from his first term. How is that a valid excuse?
Well, I don't think it is a valid excuse. And I think, like Tristin said, people are just checked out. And a lot of people just want to, go to work and pay their bills and raise their families. They don't want to have to worry about politics. I used to be that person. I mean, it wasn't until the late 90s or the early 2000s where I even started paying attention. And even at that time, I mean, the other aspect is that there's so many problems. There's so many scandals. It's overwhelming. And I'm a firm believer that, once you identify that there's a problem, then it becomes your responsibility to try and do something about it. And I think, that's just an overwhelming prospect for so many Canadians. They just want to, like I said, go to work, pay their bills, raise their children, and enjoy their life without having to worry about politics. But again, like you just said, I mean, if you don't participate in politics, then it's going to run you.
Indeed. Guys, we're rapidly running out of racetrack, so I think if we can get to our viewer feedback and end the show on a cringe video, it's involving a Trudeau. No, not Justin Trudeau jumping like the Energizer Bunny behind Katy Perry. It's another Trudeau in another video. So, Tamara, do we have some super chats on your end?
We sure do. Okay. I've got one here from, I just think she's going to bring it up, J. Thomas 8318. For a $10 super chat. I'm utterly opposed to AI data centers because the data being collected is to develop predictive models for every person to control us. It's literally something out of Winter Soldier.
Tristin, what do you say about that? Because my feeling, whether that or not that's true, if we don't develop it here in the West, I mean, collectively, well, China sure is, right?
I would compare it. I mean, it's a massive transformative new technology. So I would compare it to the discourse we could have had 100 years ago about the automobile. Some people saying, well, this is a way to get off trains. This is a way to get to town on time. This can change agriculture, whatever. And then you could have some people saying, well, cars can also be used to perpetrate crimes faster. Pedestrians will get run over, and both sides would have been correct. But you could argue that's aside the point of whether you could actually stop cars from becoming the ubiquitous form of transport used all over the world.
100%. And I'm sure at the time there were lobby groups saying, but what about the wagon wheel makers? They'll be put out of business. You know what? I'll take an automobile over an open wagon any day of the year. I guess any day of the week, rather. I guess progress is a thing, and if we're not going to do it, other people will do it, and we'll be left behind. Tamara, do we have some more chats?
We sure do. We have one more $5 super chat from P.S. Schofield 10. Oh, goody. A yellow-dressed Green Party pot-banging Karen. What a dope. I had to laugh at that too. The bang. I've been banging pots for a long time. Good for you. Good for you.
Is that how you tried to incite a jailhouse riot, Tamara Leach?
Yes, yeah, banging on pots. Only I was dressed in green, not orange or not yellow.
And Tristin, what do you have to say about that comment?
Banging of the pots. Yes, I do remember during the COVID period. This was sort of, and I think a lot of people are still hanging on to that. Here in Victoria, when everybody was banging the pots at like 7 o'clock or something, to thank the nurses. And I think for a lot of people, this was like the first communal experience they'd ever had. So I think they've, you go to church, you could join a service club, you could have a family, and so I think a lot of people are, potentially were affected by that and have missed that it's gone or trying to recapture it in some way.
Tristin, thank you for reminding me of that, because it wasn't just the average man and woman on the street banging pots. But I remember those videos coming out of nurses doing like, it was like a choreographed dance,
Yeah, the
banging
dance videos.
pots, and right out of like the chorus line. And I used to think, Tamara, weren't the hospitals under siege with all the COVID patients? But apparently there was time to do this kind of thing. What are your thoughts?
Oh, there was tons of those dance videos that came out. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we were being told that the hospitals were full. And, obviously, I mean, so much of the truth has come out since then. So we know that wasn't true. But they were quite ridiculous to watch, actually.
100%. Tamara, any more chats there?
No, that's it.
All right.
That's all of them.
Why don't we watch the cringe video and we'll get your parting comments for the weekend. As I said, it is involving a Trudeau, but not Justin for a change. Let's check out Justin Trudeau's son and his, well, I guess, can I call it an attempt at rap music? Roll it.
She wanna tell me I'm toxic, flawless. I know that you want me, baby, but I'm not the one. Girl, I keep it P. I don't mean to do you wrong.
Where do I begin? Guys, I want to get your thoughts on this, and maybe it's a conspiracy theory, but I really believe the real reason Justin Trudeau is courting Katy Perry, it has less to do about romance and more to do with getting a connection with high-profile record executives in the industry, which, of course, Katy Perry would be connected to. So somebody like his son, who, given the evidence of that clip, has very little talent, can get a recording deal. Tristin Hopper, what say you?
I certainly, if I was Trudeau, I would love that theory that, this, my sleeping with Katy Perry is this actually benevolent, father, act of fatherly love. But I think he would actually agree with you on that side. But I guess these videos, I always tell the Gen Zers, put your thumb over the years 2015 and 2025, and just imagine that, Justin Trudeau never became prime minister. I remember the pre-politics Justin Trudeau era. You would be at some student event, and then, there's Justin Trudeau. He's so handsome, the handsome son of Pierre Trudeau, and he would show up and he'd act like a teenager, and he'd have a couple beers, and if you didn't get, touched inappropriately by him, it'd be kind of fun that he had been there. And there is an alternate reality in Canada in which that was the only Justin Trudeau we ever knew. He was just kind of this fun, perpetual adolescent just showing up in weird areas. He's in a commercial for a week. He's doing a weird cameo in an independent thing. He's showing up in some. So I would ask people to imagine how much better we would be as a country and how much happier Justin Trudeau would be if that was the only Justin Trudeau we had ever known.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's kind of like a version of the man in the high castle. Tamara Leach, I don't know, there's something I find perversely amusing that, Justin Trudeau's children, of course, grew up in uber privilege. And here's his son at, what was it called? Shawarma Fest, and doing a rap song. I don't know about growing up in the mean streets of Ottawa. There's such a disconnect here. I don't know how to make sense of it all. What say you?
I can't either. I mean, I've seen a couple of his performances, and it's really not my style of music. I prefer electric guitars and stuff and drums. But yeah, this is absolutely so cringe. Almost as cringe as his father bopping through a Katy Perry video. Which I have to laugh. I mean, wasn't that the clip of Justin Trudeau just bouncing through there like a analogous to his entire prime ministership? Just
what?
Bouncing around, ping pong ping.
Good point. I mean, I've always thought Justin Trudeau as a prime minister was lazy. I mean, he'd rather be surfing on Tofino Beach and smoking his bong. But to your point of him bouncing like a bunny rabbit, Do we have that video, Olivia? Oh, here he is.
Ugh,
Look
gosh.
what some fathers will do, if my theory is correct, to get their kid a recording deal. I mean, this was our former prime minister just a year and a bit ago, and now he's like a member of the Yule Hallmeyer dancers. You know, Tristan,
and
when you
this
saw
man
that
questioned.
Oh, what's that, Tamara?
This is the man that. I said, this is the man that questioned whether some Canadians should be tolerated. This is the man that told you that you couldn't get on a plane or a train or a boat, and people believed him. Like, people believed him.
Tristan, what was your response when you saw that video?
I've seen a bunch of people, and they're trying to say that, you know, Katy Perry is washed up and she's unattractive. That, you know, Katy Perry is obviously gorgeous. I think if I went to the ghost of John Diefenbaker, and I said, okay, you've been kicked out as prime minister. Do you want Justin Trudeau's fate here, where he's appearing in with this gorgeous American starlet? Or do you want, you know, here's how the next 20 years is going to look for you, Deef? I think he would probably take that option. I think Louis Saint Laurent, everybody would take this option. So, you know, don't pretend, don't mock it just because, you know, it's obviously a nice way to spend one's retirement.
And, you know, Tamara, to Tristan's point, I find Katy Perry attractive as well. And we did Streeters last summer outside the Scotiabank Arena, asking Katy Perry fans at a Katy Perry concert what they thought of the romance. And basically the question was, could she do better? And it was almost 100% yes. What's in it for Katy Perry?
That's a really good question. But, you know, like Tristan said, Justin Trudeau is who he is, and he did what he did. But, you know, he's trying to move on with his life. And I'm not going to begrudge anyone for trying to just be happy. That's all anyone really wants, is just to be happy. But, I mean, it is good for him, I guess. Good for him. There's probably worse places where he could have ended up.
Yeah, be happy, or as the saying goes, ignorance is bliss. I don't know what that means, but I'm happy. Anyway, Tristan, it was wonderful to have you on the panel. Tell our viewers, please, how they can see your work.
Subscribe to the National Post. We have a podcast that is called Canada Did What? ? And exclamation mark. History podcast. You of course just brought up my Twitter feed, and I have a book. It is called Don't Be Canada. It came out last year.
Great. I love your work, Tristan, and thank you so much for coming on the panel. And Tamara Leach, anything that you're working on that you want to tease for our viewers?
Absolutely. I am heading to Okotoks, Alberta later this afternoon, and I will be traveling to Okotoks, Lethbridge, and Medicine Hat tomorrow with Sheila Gunn Reid to distribute some lawn signs for her Alberta's Choice TPA.
Oh, okay. Well, I hope you don't run into some Antifa member decrying a fascist pancake fest. So, I hope you and Sheila Gunn Reid have a wonderful time. So thank you, too. And folks,
thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in. A special thank you for those who gave us a contribution. That's how we keep the lights on. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. As the saying goes, thank God it's TGIF or something like that. In the meantime, I'll be back on Monday, I believe, with the aforementioned Sheila Gunn Reid. So please, as always, stay safe and stay sane.
I've got a big announcement. Rebel News Live is back this fall, and we're coming to 3 cities: Calgary, Vancouver, and Toronto. Rebel News Live will be in Calgary on Saturday, October 31st at the Carriage House Hotel and Conference Center. Then we're heading to Vancouver on Saturday, November 14th, and then on to Toronto on Saturday, November 21st at Canada Christian College in Whitby. 3 cities, 3 incredible days, and I want to see you there. Now, if you've never been to one of our live events before, let me tell you what it's like, because I genuinely believe there's nothing else like it in Canada. We've been doing these gatherings for years, and every single time without fail, the thing people tell me afterwards, the thing they remember most isn't any particular speech, as good as the speeches are. It's the feeling in the room. It's walking in and realizing you are surrounded by hundreds of Canadians who think the way you think, who care about the things you care about, who've been watching the same stories you've been watching and asking the The same questions you've been asking. People who have felt, frankly, a little bit alone in their communities and who suddenly realize they are not alone at all. That is what Rebel News Live is. It's a convention. It's a family reunion of sorts. It's a day where you get to be yourself completely without apology. And once you've experienced it, you keep coming back. Our attendees know what I mean. We have regulars. Now, who's going to be there this fall? I'll be there. Sheila Gunn-Reid will be there. Tamara Leach will be there. And the Rebel News team will be joining us. Over the coming weeks, we'll be announcing some additional very special guest speakers. And trust me, you're going to want to hear who's coming. Stay tuned. Here's what the day looks like. Doors open at 8 in the morning with a light breakfast. Then a full slate of speeches and panel discussions. The kind of conversations you would never see on the CBC. Catered lunch, more speakers in the afternoon, and for VIP ticket holders, an exclusive dinner with me, Sheila, Tamara, and our guests at the end of the night. And in between all that, we've got a full merchandise store on site, Rebel News toques and hoodies and mugs and books. And yes, I will be there to sign them, and we'll have other sponsors and exhibitor booths from some of the best freedom-oriented businesses and organizations in the country, people you want to know about, causes worth supporting, and groups doing the real work on the issues that matter. It's worth showing up early to spend some time at those booths before the speeches begin. It's the best gathering of freedom-minded Canadians anywhere in the country. I've been saying that for years, and I keep saying it because it keeps being true. Now, I need to be straight with you about one thing. These events sell out every single year without exception. If you wait too long, you will not get in. I've seen it happen. I don't want it to happen to you. So here's what I need you to do right now. Go to rebelnewslive.com and get your tickets at the early bird price, because that price will not be around forever. Calgary on October 31st, Vancouver on November 14th, Toronto on November 21st. Pick your city, pick your date, and get your seats locked in before they're gone. There's nothing quite like spending a full day in a room full of Canadians who actually get it, people who've been watching, who've been following along, who are in this fight with us. I'll see you there. Go to rebelnewslive.com. Get your tickets at the early bird price before they sell out.